Commander Veltar stared at the datapad in his four hands. The information made no sense to him. He had been watching alien species fight for 300 years. He knew which ones were strong and which ones were weak. The file in front of him showed the weakest species he had ever seen. Humans. He said the word slowly. His voice made a clicking sound that echoed in his small office on the ship Starwatch. The ship floated in empty space far from any planet. This was where new species came to prove they could fight. If they passed the tests, they could join the Galactic Confederation. If they failed, they went home and never came back. Veltar looked at the pictures of humans again. They had no claws, no thick skin, no sharp teeth. They were not very big or very fast. They lived for less than 100 years, which was nothing compared to most species. The strongest human could barely lift what a child from his own species could carry easily. Why are they even here? Veltar wondered out loud. His assistant, a young Nexari named Kelmos, looked up from his own workstation. "Sir, the humans requested the combat trials themselves," Kelmos said. "They say they want to join the Confederation." Veltar made a sound that was like laughing but not friendly. "They will be destroyed in the first test. This is a waste of time." The door to his office made a soft sound as it opened. 3 humans walked in. Veltar had seen many different alien species, but these humans looked so ordinary that it almost hurt to look at them. They wore simple gray uniforms with no decorations. No weapons that he could see. No armor at all. The first human stepped forward. He was not very tall, with dark hair and calm eyes. "Commander Veltar, I am Captain Hyunwoo Park. Thank you for allowing us to take the trials." Veltar studied the human captain. Hyunwoo did not look scared, but he should be. The combat trials had killed thousands of aliens over the years. "Captain Park, do you understand what you are asking for? These tests are not games. Many species have died trying to pass them." "We understand, sir," said the second human. She was a woman with short black hair and quick eyes that seemed to look at everything in the room at once. "I am Lieutenant So-young Kim. We have studied the trials for many months." The third human was bigger than the other 2, but still smaller than most alien warriors. "Sergeant Dong-min Lee, sir," he said in a deep voice. "We are ready." Veltar looked at all 3 humans. They seemed so calm. Most new species were either very excited or very scared when they came for the trials. These humans just stood there like they were waiting for simple orders. "Very well," Veltar said. "Your first test will be against the Kethavar. They are a warrior species. They have been fighting for over 1,000 years. They are very good at killing." He paused, waiting to see fear in the human's eyes. He saw nothing. "The test will happen in a simulated asteroid field. You will have basic weapons and armor. The goal is to survive for 1 hour." Captain Hyunwoo nodded. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow morning. Use tonight to prepare. You will need it." Veltar turned back to his datapad, expecting the humans to leave. Instead, Captain Hyunwoo spoke again. "Commander, may I ask a question?" Veltar looked up, surprised. "What? What happened to the last species that took these trials?" "They lasted 8 minutes," Veltar said. "The Kethavar killed all of them." "Thank you, sir. That is helpful to know." The 3 humans turned and left the office. Kelmus waited until the door closed. "Sir, should we prepare medical teams?" "No," Veltar said. "Prepare the death certificates. This will be over very quickly." The next morning, Veltar sat in the observation deck above the combat arena. The arena was made to look like an asteroid field in space. Floating rocks of different sizes moved slowly through the area. Some were as small as a person, others were as big as buildings. The Kethavar warriors were already in position, hiding behind the larger asteroids. The Kethavar were everything that humans were not. They were twice as tall as humans and 3 times as heavy. Their skin was thick like armor. They had 4 arms, each one strong enough to crush metal. Their weapons were energy rifles that could cut through solid rock. The 3 humans appeared on the other side of the arena. They had been given simple laser weapons and light armor. They looked like children playing with toys compared to the Kethavar. "Begin combat trial," Veltar announced over the communication system. What happened next surprised him. Instead of charging forward like most species did, the humans immediately split up. Captain Hyunwoo went left, Lieutenant So-young went right, and Sergeant Dong-min stayed in the center but moved behind a small asteroid. The Kethavar warriors started shooting. Their energy beams lit up the arena like lightning. Veltar expected to see human bodies floating in space within seconds. Instead, he saw something strange. The humans were not trying to shoot back. They were moving from asteroid to asteroid, always staying hidden. When they did shoot, they aimed not at the HFY, but at the rocks around them. Pieces of asteroid began floating through the arena. "What are they doing?" Kelmos asked. Veltar did not answer. He was watching Captain Hyunwoo do something that no other species had ever tried. The human was pushing a small asteroid with his feet, making it spin toward the HFY position. When the rock got close, Hyunwoo shot it with his laser. The asteroid exploded into many small pieces that hit the HFY warrior like bullets. The HFY warrior was not hurt badly, but he was surprised. In his 300 years of fighting, he had never seen anyone use the arena itself as a weapon. Lieutenant So Young was doing something else that made no sense. She was not hiding behind asteroids. She was hiding under them, using their shadows to move without being seen. When a HFY warrior came to look for her, she was already gone. Sergeant Dong Min had found the biggest asteroid he could move. He was pushing it slowly toward the center of the arena. Every time the HFY shot at him, he hid behind his rock. Their energy beams were making the asteroid smaller, but Dong Min kept pushing. For 20 minutes, the humans ran and hid and used the asteroids in ways that Veltar had never seen. They were not winning, but they were not dying either. The HFY were getting angry. They were used to quick victories, not long chases. Then the humans made their first real attack. Captain Hyunwoo had been pushing asteroids around for 20 minutes, but not randomly. He had been building something, a wall of floating rocks that blocked one side of the arena. When the HFY realized what he had done, it was too late. Lieutenant So Young appeared from behind the wall and shot one HFY warrior in the back. At the same time, Sergeant Dong Min's big asteroid finally reached the center of the arena. He shot it with his laser, and it exploded into thousands of pieces that flew in every direction. The last HFY warrior was hit by so many rock pieces that his armor cracked. He fell to the ground, not dead but unable to fight. The arena became quiet. Veltar looked at the clock. 55 minutes had passed. The humans had lasted almost the full hour, but they had also won. Captain Hyunwoo's voice came over the communication system. "Commander Veltar, we are ready for the next trial." Veltar stared at the three humans standing in the asteroid field. They were not celebrating. They were not excited. They were just standing there waiting for orders. For the first time in 300 years, Veltar did not know what to think. 3 days had passed since the humans defeated the HFY. Veltar had watched the recording of that fight dozens of times. Each time he noticed something new. The humans had not just been lucky. They had been thinking. Now they faced their second trial. The Mordesh were very different from the HFY. Where the HFY were individual warriors, the Mordesh were a hive mind. 50 Mordesh soldiers shared one brain. They moved together like one giant creature with many bodies. They never made mistakes because they all thought the same thoughts at the same time. Veltar sat in his observation chair watching the new arena. This time it was a maze of metal corridors like the inside of a giant ship. The walls were thick with many turns and dead ends. Perfect for the Mordesh style of fighting. 2 more humans had joined the team. Major Jin-A Choi stood next to Captain Hyunwoo, studying a map of the maze. She was older than the others, with gray in her black hair and scars on her hands. Corporal Tae Ho Yoon was the youngest human Veltar had seen. He looked like he was barely old enough to fight, but his eyes were sharp and quick. "The Mordesh have never lost a battle in 800 years, Veltar announced over the communication system. "They cannot be surprised because they share all information instantly. They cannot be confused because they all know what each one knows. You will face 50 enemies who fight as one." Captain Hyunwoo looked up at the observation deck. "Commander, are there any rules about how we fight them?" "No rules. Survive for 1 hour or defeat them completely. Those are your only choices." Veltar watched the humans talk quietly among themselves. He could not hear their words, but he could see their faces. They did not look worried. They looked interested, like they were solving a puzzle. The Mordesh entered the maze from the opposite end. They moved in perfect formation, checking every corner at the same time. Their weapons were energy spears that could cut through metal. They wore no armor because they never needed it. When 50 minds thought together, they could not be beaten. "Begin combat trial," Veltar said. The humans immediately did something strange. Instead of staying together like most species would, they spread out through the maze. But they did not go alone. Captain Hyunwoo and Major Jinhae went one way. Lieutenant So Young and Sergeant Dongmin went another. Corporal Taeho went by himself down a third path. They are dividing their forces, Kelmos said. That is a mistake against the Mordesh. Veltar nodded. When fighting a hive mind, it was important to stay together. The Mordesh could surround small groups easily. But as he watched, he began to see what the humans were really doing. Corporal Taeho was running through the maze very fast, making a lot of noise. The Mordesh heard him and began to follow. All 50 of them turned toward his position. But when they got there, he was gone. At the same time, Captain Hyunwoo and Major Jinhae were moving very quietly through a different part of the maze. They found 3 Mordesh soldiers who had been left behind to guard an exit. The 2 humans attacked quickly and silently. Before the 3 Mordesh could send a warning to the others, they were unconscious. Lieutenant So Young and Sergeant Dong Min were doing something even more strange. They were making marks on the walls of the maze. Not words or pictures, but simple lines and dots. When they moved to a new corridor, they made different marks. What are those marks for? Kelmos asked. Veltar did not answer. He was beginning to understand, and it made him uncomfortable. The Mordesh found Corporal Taeho again. This time they had him trapped in a dead-end corridor. All 50 soldiers raised their spears, ready to kill him. But Taeho was not looking at them. He was looking at the marks on the wall behind him. Suddenly, the wall exploded. Sergeant Dongmin came through it with a heavy weapon, shooting at the surprised Mordesh. The hive mind had been watching Taeho so carefully that they had not noticed Dongmin coming from the other side. But the real surprise was what happened next. As the Mordesh turned to fight Sergeant Dongmin, Captain Hyunwoo and Major Jinhae appeared from another direction, and Lieutenant So Young came from a third way. The humans had surrounded the Mordesh. For the first time in 800 years, the hive mind felt confusion. They could see all the humans at the same time, but they could not understand how the humans had gotten behind them. The marks on the walls had been a code, letting the humans talk to each other without making sound. The Mordesh tried to form their perfect fighting formation, but the humans would not let them. Every time the Mordesh moved together, the humans split up and attacked from new directions. When the Mordesh split up to chase them, the humans came back together. Veltar watched something he had never seen before. The humans were making the hive mind doubt itself. 50 Mordesh minds were starting to think different thoughts. Some wanted to chase Corporal Taeho. Others wanted to fight Sergeant Dongmin. A few were trying to understand the marks on the walls. Impossible, Kelmos whispered. The hive mind cannot be divided. But it was happening. The more the humans changed their tactics, the more confused the Mordesh became. And confusion was something the hive mind had never learned to handle. Major Jinhae did something that made Veltar's skin crawl. She started talking to the Mordesh, not threatening them or giving orders. She was asking them questions. Why do you all think the same thoughts? She called out as she ran down a corridor. What happens if one of you wants to do something different? The questions should not have mattered. The Mordesh shared one mind. They knew who they were. But hearing the questions made some of them wonder about the answers. And wondering was not something the hive mind was supposed to do. One Mordesh soldier stopped running. Then another. They were thinking about Major Jinhae's questions instead of thinking about the fight. The hive mind tried to pull them back together, but doubt was like a crack in glass. Once it started, it spread quickly. Captain Hyunwoo saw what was happening. He started asking more questions. Do you all feel the same emotions? Do you all want the same things? What if one of you is wrong? Half the Mordesh soldiers stopped fighting completely. They stood in the corridors looking at each other like they had never seen their own kind before. The other half tried to keep fighting, but they were confused and scared. Lieutenant So Young made the final move. She had been watching the Mordesh carefully, learning how they moved together. She found the soldier who seemed to be the center of the hive mind, the one who sent thoughts to all the others. Instead of attacking him, she talked to him. You don't have to share your thoughts, she said quietly. You can think for yourself. The central Mordesh soldier looked at her with wide eyes. For just a moment he thought a thought that was only his own. The effect on the hive mind was like lightning hitting water. All 50 soldiers suddenly felt alone in their own heads for the first time in their lives. They dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. Not because they were hurt, but because they were free. And freedom was terrifying when you had never felt it before. The maze became completely quiet. Veltar looked at the clock. Only 37 minutes had passed. The humans had not just survived. They had broken something that was supposed to be unbreakable. But the strangest thing happened next. Corporal Tejo, the youngest human, walked over to one of the fallen Mordesh soldiers. The alien was wounded and bleeding. Tejo took out a medical kit and began treating the wound. "Why are you helping me?" the Mordesh soldier asked. His voice was weak and confused. "We tried to kill you." "Because you're hurt," Tejo said simply. "And because now you can choose whether to be our enemy or not." Other humans began helping wounded Mordesh soldiers. They gave them water and medical care. They spoke to them gently, asking their names and treating them like individuals instead of parts of a hive mind. Veltar watched this and felt something cold in his stomach. The humans had not just won by fighting better. They had won by changing the nature of their enemies. They had taken a hive mind and turned it into 50 individuals who could make their own choices. Captain Hyunwoo's voice came over the communication system. "Commander Veltar, we are ready for the next trial." Veltar looked down at the maze. The humans were helping their former enemies stand up and walk. Some of the Mordesh soldiers were actually smiling, like they had just discovered something wonderful. "Kelmos," Veltar said quietly. "Send a message to the Confederation Council. Tell them we may have a problem, sir." The humans passed the trial. "Isn't that good?" Veltar watched Captain Hyunwoo shake hands with a Mordesh soldier. The alien looked confused but happy. "I don't know," Veltar said. "I honestly don't know." The Confederation Council had been arguing for 3 days. Veltar sat in the back of the great meeting hall, listening to representatives from 800 different species shout at each other. The subject of their anger stood quietly in the center of the room, 5 humans in simple uniforms. "They are too dangerous," roared Ambassador Theclon from the warrior caste. "No species should be able to break a Mordish hive mind." "They show promise," clicked Ambassador Sarnath from the Science Guild. "We should study how they think. We should send them home before they cause more trouble," hissed Ambassador Velnash from the Trade Federation. The lead human, Colonel Woojin Nam, stood with his hands behind his back. He was older than the other humans Veltar had seen, with white hair and deep lines around his eyes. Next to him stood Captain Yunmi Seo, a woman with quick fingers who kept touching a small device on her belt. Lieutenant Kyung-ho An was young and thin, with oil stains on his uniform from working with machines. Sergeant Yejin Bei carried a medical bag and kept looking around the room like she wanted to help someone. The 5th human was Captain Hyunwoo Park. Veltar had been watching him for weeks now. The man never seemed angry or scared or excited. He just watched and listened and learned. "Enough." The voice belonged to High Admiral Kethran of the Corsair Defense Force. The room became quiet. Everyone knew the Corsairs. They were pirates who had been attacking Confederation ships for 300 years. No military force had ever been able to stop them completely. "These humans think they are warriors," Admiral Kethran continued. "Let them face the Zephnari Corsairs. When the Corsairs are done with them, we will have our answer." The room became even quieter. Fighting the Corsairs was not a trial. It was a death sentence. No species had ever defeated them in direct combat. "That is not a trial," said Ambassador Sarnath. "That is murder." "Then let them refuse," Admiral Kethran said with a smile that showed sharp teeth. "Let them admit they are not real warriors." All eyes turned to Colonel Wu Jin. The human looked around the room slowly, meeting the gaze of dozens of different alien species. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "We accept." The room exploded with noise. Some aliens cheered. Others made sounds of shock. A few began making bets on how long the humans would survive. Veltar felt sick. He had been watching these humans for weeks. They were strange and unpredictable, but they did not deserve to die for entertainment. 3 days later, Veltar stood on the observation deck of a much larger ship. Below him was the moon Kethvala, a dead world covered in ruins and broken machines. This was where the Corsairs had set up their base. It was also where the humans would die. But when the human transport ship landed, 50 soldiers came out instead of 5. Colonel Wu Jin had brought his full combat unit. Veltar watched them through his viewing scope, trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans moved like water flowing downhill. They spread out across the landing area, but they stayed connected somehow. When one human found cover behind a broken wall, others moved to support him. When another human spotted an enemy position, The information seemed to flow to everyone else instantly. Captain Unmiseo was talking constantly into her communication device. But she was not giving orders. She was sharing information. 3 Corsairs on the hill to our left. Machine gun nest in the old tower. Sniper on the roof of the red building. Lieutenant Kyung-ho An was doing something that made Veltar's eyes hurt to watch. He was taking broken Corsair machines and making them work again. In the middle of a battle, he was building new weapons from old parts. Sergeant Yejin Bei was running from human to human, treating wounds and keeping everyone healthy. But she was also carrying weapons and fighting when she needed to. The Corsairs were good fighters. They had been raiding and stealing for centuries. They knew every trick, every strategy, every way to win a battle. But as Veltar watched, he began to see that the humans were learning those tricks faster than the Corsairs could use them. A Corsair sniper shot at Captain Hyunwoo from a hidden position. Hyunwoo dove for cover, but he also noted exactly where the shot came from. Within minutes, 3 other humans had surrounded the sniper's position. They did not kill him. They captured him and his rifle. Lieutenant Kyung-ho took the rifle apart and studied it for 10 minutes. Then he built 3 copies of it using parts from broken Corsair vehicles. Now the humans had better weapons. Captain Yunmi was listening to Corsair radio communications. Veltar could see her frowning as she worked. After an hour, she smiled and began talking into her own radio. But she was not speaking human language. She was speaking Corsair language, giving false orders to enemy units. Unit 7, fall back to position 12, she said in perfect Corsair accent. Unit 3, advance to the water tower. The Corsairs began moving to new positions based on her false orders. When they arrived, humans were waiting for them. But the strangest thing was what happened to the Corsairs who were captured. Instead of being tied up or locked away, they were brought to Colonel Wu Jin. The old human sat with each captured Corsair and talked to them. Why do you fight for the Corsair leaders? He asked a young alien pirate. Because they are strong, the Corsair answered. Because they give us food and weapons. What if someone else was stronger? Someone who gave you better food and better weapons? And what if they also gave you respect and friendship? The young Corsair looked confused. No one offers such things to pirates. We do, Colonel Wu Jin said simply. By the end of the first day, 12 Corsairs had joined the human side. They were still pirates, but now they were pirates working with humans instead of against them. Veltar watched this happen over and over. Humans would capture enemies, talk to them, and somehow turn them into allies. It should not have been possible. Corsairs were loyal to their leaders and their ships. They did not change sides, but humans were offering them something the Corsair leaders never had. Choice. They could keep being pirates, but they could also be something more. They could be part of a team that respected them and trusted them. On the second day, a group of Corsairs surrendered without fighting. They had heard about the humans from their captured friends. They wanted to know more about these strange aliens who turned enemies into allies. Captain Unmi had broken the Corsair communication codes completely. She was not just giving false orders now. She was broadcasting human ideas to every Corsair unit on the moon. You don't have to live in fear of your leaders, her voice said over Corsair radios. You don't have to fight battles just to survive. There is a better way. Some Corsairs got angry and destroyed their radios, but others listened. And listening was the first step toward changing. Lieutenant Kyung-ho had built a workshop in an old Corsair bunker. He was teaching captured Corsairs how to build better weapons and machines. The aliens were amazed that someone would share such knowledge with former enemies. Why do you teach us your secrets? Asked an old Corsair engineer. Because when you know how to build things, you can create instead of just steal, Kyung-ho answered. Creating is better than destroying. By the third day, the Corsair base was split in half. Some pirates were still fighting the humans, but others were fighting alongside them. Brothers who had served together for decades were now on opposite sides. The Corsair leaders tried to regain control by threatening to kill anyone who helped the humans. But Colonel Wu Jin made a different offer. Any Corsair who wants to leave can leave safely, he announced over the communication system. Any Corsair who wants to stay and help build something better is welcome. And any Corsair leader who wants to find a new way to live can sit down and talk with us. 3 Corsair captains took him up on the offer. They met with Colonel Wu Jin in an old machine shop with weapons laid aside and guards from both sides watching. What do you want from us? Asked Captain Veltak, the oldest Corsair leader. We want you to stop attacking innocent ships, Colonel Wu Jin said. We want you to use your skills for building instead of destroying, and we want you to treat your people with respect instead of fear. And in return, you get to be part of something bigger than piracy. You get to be part of a galaxy where your children can grow up safe and proud." Captain Velthak was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "What if we refuse? Then we fight until one side wins. But fighting is wasteful. Building together is better." The meeting lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 2 of the 3 Corsair captains had agreed to try the human way. The 3rd captain left peacefully with any of his people who wanted to follow him. On the 4th day, the remaining Corsairs launched their final attack. But they were not fighting just humans anymore. They were fighting humans and former Corsairs working together. The battle was over in 3 hours. When the shooting stopped, Veltar counted the results. The humans had not just defeated the Corsairs. They had recruited 40% of them. The most feared pirates in the galaxy were now building gardens and workshops instead of planning raids. Colonel Wu Jin's voice came over the communication system. "Commander Veltar, we are ready for the next trial." Veltar looked down at the moon where former enemies were sharing food and telling stories around campfires. Human soldiers were teaching Corsair children how to read. Corsair engineers were. The emergency meeting was held on the space station Nexus Prime, the largest structure ever built by the Confederation. Representatives from every major species crowded into the main assembly hall. Veltar had never seen so many important people in one place. At the center of the attention sat 5 humans. But these were not the same humans who had taken the trials. These humans wore different uniforms with more decorations. They looked older, more serious, and somehow more dangerous. The leader was Fleet Admiral Sang-hyuk Jang. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands. Next to him sat General Mi-young Lim, a woman with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Colonel Jae-sung Park was younger, but carried himself like someone who had seen many battles. Major Hee-won-ko was small and quiet, but Veltar noticed that the other humans always listened when she spoke. The 5th human was Captain Hyun-woo Park, the same man who had taken the first trials. But now Veltar understood that Hyun-woo had never been just a captain. He had been representing something much larger. "You lied to us," said High Admiral Kethron of the Corsair Defense Force. His voice was angry and hurt. "You sent observers, not warriors." Fleet Admiral Sang-hyuk stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire hall without him raising it. "We sent exactly what we said we would send. Representatives of humanity. But they were not your real military." "Every human is our real military," General Mi-young said calmly. "The people who took your trials were scientists, engineers, and teachers. Captain Hyun-woo is a history professor. Lieutenant So-young designs computer programs. Sergeant Dong-min builds houses." The hall erupted in noise. Aliens shouted in dozens of different languages. Veltar felt his hearts beating faster. If the humans who had defeated the Kethvar, broken the Mordesh, and converted the Corsairs were not even soldiers, then what were the real soldiers like? "Order, order!" shouted the council speaker. When the noise died down, he turned to the humans. "Admiral Jang, what is the true strength of your military?" "That is not the right question," Admiral Sang-hyuk replied. "You are thinking about this wrong. Then what is the right question?" "The right question is, what is the true strength of humanity?" High Admiral Kethron laughed bitterly. "We have seen your strength. You turn our warriors into your friends. You break our weapons and build better ones. You take our tactics and improve them. But we are not afraid of you anymore. We know your secret now, do you?" asked General Mi-young. "What do you think our secret is?" "You fight with your minds instead of your bodies. You use psychology and engineering instead of strength and speed. It is clever, but we can learn to defend against it." Major Hee-won-ko spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet, but somehow everyone in the hall heard her clearly. "You still don't understand. We are not fighting you. We have never been fighting you. Then what are you doing?" "We are teaching you how to be better than you were before." The hall became completely silent. Veltar felt something cold crawl up his spine. He was beginning to understand what the humans really were. Admiral Sang-hyuk activated a holographic display in the center of the hall. It showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of small lights. "These are the locations of every human ship in space. Please note how many are near your homeworlds." Veltar counted the lights near his own species' territory. There were hundreds of them. Enough to destroy entire planets. When did they get there? whispered Ambassador Sarnath. They have been there for 6 months, Admiral Sang-hyuk said. While you were watching our representatives take your trials, we were studying your defenses, your trade routes, your military bases, and your political systems. You have been spying on us. We have been learning about you, General Mi-young corrected. The same way we learned about the Kethvar before we fought them. The same way we learned about the Mordesh before we freed them. The same way we learned about the Corsairs before we recruited them. Colonel Jae-sung Park stood up and walked to the holographic display. He touched it with his finger and the image changed. Now it showed detailed plans of Confederation military bases. Your defense satellites use quantum encryption that can be broken in 4 hours with standard human computers, he said casually. Your communications rely on channels that we have been monitoring for months. Your supply ships follow routes that we could cut off in less than a day. The display changed again. This time it showed financial records, political documents, and personal files. Ambassador Theklan, you have been stealing money from your government for 12 years, Major Hyewan-ko said without emotion. High Admiral Kethran, you have been selling weapons to pirates. Council Speaker Velnash, you have been planning to overthrow 3 different planetary governments. The aliens named looked shocked and terrified. They had thought their secrets were safe. How do you know these things? Demanded the council speaker. Because while you were arguing about whether we deserved to join your confederation, we were learning everything about it, Admiral Sang-hyuk said. Every strength, every weakness, every secret, every lie. Are you threatening us? No. We are offering you a choice. The holographic display changed one more time. Now it showed something beautiful. Planets covered in green forests, cities full of happy people, and ships flying peacefully between stars. This is what your galaxy could look like, General Mi-young said. No more piracy, no more war between species, no more corruption or fear or waste. And if we refuse? Admiral Sang-hyuk was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was sad but firm. Then we will make it happen anyway. But it will be much easier if you help us. Beltar stood up from his seat. His voice shook as he spoke. You planned this from the beginning. The trials, the tests, everything. You were never trying to join us. You were studying us to take over. Captain Hyun-woo, the history professor who had pretended to be a simple soldier, looked directly at Beltar. Commander, do you remember what I told you after the first trial? Beltar thought back. You said you were ready for the next trial. That is right. We have been taking trials our entire history. Every war, every conflict, every challenge has been a trial that taught us something new. We learned about different ways of thinking from every enemy we faced. We learned about different ways of fighting from every battle we won or lost. The Kethvar taught us how to use environment as a weapon, Lieutenant So-young added. She had appeared at the back of the hall without anyone noticing. The Mordesh taught us how to break apart unified thinking, said Sergeant Dongmin, who was standing near another door. The Corsairs taught us how to turn enemies into allies, said Colonel Woo Jin, who was somehow now on the observation deck. Beltar realized that humans had surrounded the entire assembly hall, not with weapons or threats, but with presence. They were everywhere, watching and learning. How many of you are there? He asked weakly. Enough, Admiral Sang-hyuk said simply. We have been exploring the galaxy for 50 years, Commander. Long before we asked to join your confederation. We know about species you have never heard of. We have friends in places you have never been. We have learned things that would amaze you. The holographic display showed a new image. Humans working alongside dozens of different alien species that Beltar did not recognize. They were building massive structures in space, creating art together, and sharing knowledge freely. These are our partners, General Mi-young explained. Species that chose to work with us instead of against us. They are all stronger now than they were before. They are all happier. They are all free to be the best versions of themselves. What do you want from us? Asked the council speaker. We want you to stop fighting each other and start building together, Admiral Sang-hyuk said. We want you to stop being afraid of change and start being excited about possibilities. We want you to stop thinking about what you might lose and start thinking about what you might gain. And if we say no, Admiral Sang-hyuk smiled, but it was not a threatening smile. It was the smile of someone who already knew the answer. Then we will wait, and we will keep showing you better ways to live, and eventually, you will choose to join us because it will be obvious that joining us is better than not joining us. How can you be so confident? Because, said Captain Hyun-woo, We have never met a species that did not want to be happy, safe, and free. And we are very good at helping people get what they want. The hall was quiet for a long time. Finally, Ambassador Sarnath from the Science Guild stood up. "What would be the first step?" she asked. General Mi Young smiled. "The first step is always the same. We sit down together and start talking about how to make things better." The emergency council meeting had been going for 6 hours. Veltar sat in his chair, listening to 800 different alien voices argue about the same question. What should they do about the humans? Half the room wanted to fight. The other half wanted to surrender. A few wanted to run away and hide. But as Veltar listened to the arguments, he realized that none of these choices mattered anymore. The humans had already won. That was when the alarm started ringing. Every communication device in the room activated at once. The holographic displays showed the same terrifying message in every language. Devourer ships detected at Galaxy Edge. All military forces report for emergency deployment. The room became silent. Everyone knew about the Devourers. They came from outside the galaxy every 1,000 years, like a plague of metal and death. They destroyed everything in their path, ate entire worlds, and left nothing behind but empty space. The last time they came 300 years ago, the Confederation had lost 50 star systems before the Devourers finally left. No one knew why they had left or when they would return. Now they were back, and they were early. Admiral Sang-hyuk stood up slowly. "Council Speaker, we request permission to address this threat." "You?" High Admiral Kethran laughed bitterly. "What can one species do against the Devourers? It takes the entire Confederation to barely survive their attacks." "That is because you have been using the wrong strategy," said General Mi Young. "You hide and hope they go away. We prefer a different approach, which is, we fight them until they cannot fight anymore." The holographic displays changed to show the edge of the galaxy. Massive black ships, each one the size of a moon, were moving slowly toward inhabited systems. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "Admiral Jang," said the council speaker, "the Confederation appreciates your offer, but the Devourers are not like other enemies. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be converted to your cause. They exist only to consume and destroy." "We know," Admiral Sang-hyuk said calmly. "We have been preparing for them for 30 years. Preparing how?" Instead of answering, Admiral Sang-hyuk touched his communication device. "All human ships execute Formation Omega. All allied ships report to designated coordinates. Begin Operation Starfall." The galaxy map changed again. Thousands of green lights appeared throughout space, human ships that had been hidden or disguised. But there were also blue lights, purple lights, and lights of colors Veltar had never seen before. Ships from species the Confederation did not even know existed. "How many allies do you have?" asked Ambassador Sarnath. "Every species we have ever met," General Mi Young answered. "Every species that chose cooperation over conflict. Every species that wanted to build something better than what they had before." Colonel Jae-sung Park was working at a control station, coordinating the movements of thousands of ships. "The Devourers are targeting the Vega system first. Population 12 billion. We have 47 minutes to establish defensive positions." 47 minutes? High Admiral Kethran shook his head. "It takes the Confederation 6 hours just to organize a response. You cannot move that fast." "Watch us," said Major Hyawanko. What happened next was like watching a miracle. Human ships appeared throughout the galaxy as if they had been teleported. But Veltar realized they had not been teleported. They had been positioned and waiting. The humans had known exactly where the Devourers would attack first, but the humans were not just moving their own ships. Alien vessels from dozens of species were joining the formation. Former corsairs flew alongside former enemies. Species that had been at war for centuries worked together like they had been allies forever. "How are you coordinating all of this?" Veltar asked. Captain Hyunwoo, who was somehow still calm in the middle of the chaos, looked at him with a small smile. "The same way we coordinated everything else, Commander. We talked to people. We listened to their ideas. We found ways to make everyone stronger together than they were apart." The first battle began at the edge of the Vega system. Veltar watched through the long-range scanners as human ships engaged the Devourers. But these were not the simple skirmishes he had seen during the trials. This was war on a scale that made his mind hurt to think about. The Devourers were everything the legends said they were. Their ships were massive, heavily armed, and completely without mercy. They moved through space like a swarm of insects, consuming everything in their path. But the humans did not fight them the way the Confederation had always fought them. Instead of trying to stop the Devourers directly, they were leading them into traps. Admiral Sang-hyuk was coordinating the battle from the command center on Nexus Prime. His voice was calm as he gave orders to ships scattered across dozens of star systems. Wing 7, execute solar flare maneuver. Wing 12, begin gravitational slingshot. All mining ships prepare asteroid bombardment. Veltar watched in amazement as human ships used stars themselves as weapons. They caused solar flares that disrupted Devourer electronics. They used the gravity of planets to throw asteroids at enemy ships faster than bullets. They turned entire moons into bombs. But the most incredible thing was how they worked with their alien allies. Former Corsairs used their knowledge of hit-and-run tactics to distract the Devourers. Former Mordesh soldiers, now thinking as individuals, came up with creative solutions that no hive mind could have imagined. Even some Kethavar warriors had joined the fight, using their strength to operate massive weapons that humans had designed. "This is impossible," whispered High Admiral Kethran. "The Devourers have never been stopped like this." "That is because no one ever tried to stop them like this," said General Mi-young. "Everyone always fought them the same way. We decided to fight them differently." The battle raged for hours. The Devourers destroyed dozens of human ships, but for every ship they destroyed, 10 more appeared to take its place. And the humans were learning from every attack, adapting their tactics in real time. Du Hyun-shin, a human fleet coordinator, was managing supply lines across half the galaxy. Jung Min-han was organizing repairs and reinforcements. Sujino was gathering intelligence about Devourer weaknesses and sharing it with every ship in the Alliance. But the real surprise came when the second wave of Devourers arrived. These ships were even larger and more powerful than the first wave. The Confederation representatives began to panic. "There are too many of them," said Ambassador Teclon. "Even the humans cannot fight this many enemies." Admiral Sang-hyuk looked at the tactical display for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You are right. We cannot fight this many enemies, so we will not fight them." "What do you mean?" "Wing Alpha, execute Communication Protocol 7. All ships, switch to frequency 974. Captain Unmi Seo, who had been studying Devourer communications for months, began broadcasting on every channel the Devourers used. But she was not threatening them or demanding their surrender. She was talking to them. "Devourer ships, this is the Human Alliance. We know you are hungry. We know you need resources to survive. We are prepared to offer you what you need, without requiring you to destroy inhabited worlds." The Devourer ships stopped moving. "You consume planets because you need the materials they contain," Captain Yunmi continued. "But we can provide those materials more efficiently. We can give you what you need without killing billions of innocent people," one of the Devourer ships responded. Its voice was like the sound of metal grinding against metal. "You would negotiate them with us?" "We negotiate with everyone," Admiral Sang-hyuk said, taking over the communication. "Fighting is wasteful. Trading is better." What followed was the strangest conversation in galactic history. The Devourers, it turned out, were not mindless destroyers. They were an ancient species whose homeworld had been destroyed long ago. They traveled from galaxy to galaxy, consuming what they needed to survive because they had never learned any other way to live. The humans offered them something no one had ever offered before: a permanent home. Empty star systems where they could build new worlds, asteroid belts full of the materials they needed. And most importantly, partnership instead of loneliness. "Why would you help us?" the Devourer ship asked. "We have killed billions of your galactic neighbors." "Because killing is not necessary," Admiral Sang-hyuk replied. "Because everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were before. And because a galaxy where everyone works together is stronger than a galaxy where everyone fights." The negotiation took 12 hours. Not all the Devourers agreed to the human offer. Some of them preferred their old way of life and left the galaxy peacefully, but most of them were tired of being destroyers. They wanted to be builders instead. When the crisis ended, the galaxy was a different place. The Confederation Council met again, but this time the humans were not visitors asking for membership. They were leaders helping to plan the future. Veltar found himself appointed as the first ambassador to Earth. As his ship approached the human homeworld, he thought about everything he had witnessed. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through superior weapons or numbers. They had conquered it through superior ideas. "Commander," said his new assistant, a young Mordesh named Tel Shen who had chosen to work for the diplomatic service, "what do you think Earth will be like?" Veltar looked out at the blue and